Well, those were the good days, you know. Literature was a great adventure. It was a great key that would unlock the door to the hidden mysteries, particularly sex. And Lawrence, to me as a child, was very much the sex prophet. Of course, he ceased to be that now. We're living in the permissive age, and possibly Lady Chatterley's Lover had something to do with it. The book was released unexpurgated in England in 1960. I don't know about Canada or the United States, chiefly because, well, when we expect so much, we're bound to be disappointed. On the other hand, it's a rather tender book, and was intended to show not the glories of sex so much as the glories of male-female companionship. It's a kind of paean to the married state, I suppose. I was back in this village of Eastwood last year to make a television film, of which I hope you'll see some parts soon. And we took our television equipment into various pubs, and they said, "What are you doing here?" And we said, "We're trying to make a film on D.H. Lawrence." He said, "We don't go much for him here. Out." So what was wrong with Lawrence? Oh, he was a bad man. He married a foreign woman who was another man's wife. He wrote dirty books about sex, and he put people living in here in these books, and we've never forgiven him. And that is still pretty well the attitude. It goes on. 100 years after his birth, he's still to be forgiven. He's one of the great liberators. He is a man who showed us that literature is essentially a subversive thing. The job of the writer is not to confirm people in their comfortable prejudices, but to wake them up a little, lash them into rethinking their thoughts and reassessing their emotions. He was a tremendous revitalizing force in his own day, of course, although many refused to feel this force. But now I think he's settling, unfortunately, into a kind of classic. You know, I mean, the kids at school are made to read Sons and Lovers. Films are made of his books. His plays are put on here in London. And the English, in their usual inimitable way, are trying to tame him. In other words, making him acceptable to the ruling class. Lawrence felt himself closer to the new world. And of course, it's, I think, appropriate that he's buried in Taos in New Mexico. He's buried on American soil, not on British soil. This is, you know, I feel, the ultimate betrayal on the part of the English of one of their great writers. Indeed, one of the 10 great writers of this century. This book is important to me because it shows what people are really like under the skin. Lawrence's characters in this book behave like ordinary civilized human beings. They smoke cigarettes, they discuss Debussy, and they read books. But at the same time, underneath, they're creatures of instinct, the animal creatures almost, with the quick, irrational impulses and responses of animals. And this, I think, is what people are really like. Only they forbid themselves to be like that, except in these 300 or so peculiar, original, devastating pages. What the novel shows is the force of nature within us, the fact that we're part of nature, part of the sun and the moon and the cosmos. And he makes this very clear, despite our cigarettes, despite our civilized behavior, despite our jobs and our books and our going to cinemas and drinking beer. We are fundamentally creatures of immense instinct, which should not be wholly controlled by the forces of civilization. In other words, to hell with civilization, up with instinct. No, I've had my plastic plaque from Margaret Thatcher. I mean, only one in a lifetime. In my buttonhole, or was until I took my jacket off, the insignia of Commandeur du Mérite Culturel in France. France appreciates me, I think, a little. England doesn't. I've become a foreign writer, as Lawrence did, but at the same time, I am intensely and terribly and ineradicably, horribly British. For God's sake, let the British read their own writers. When the British Empire's already disappeared, and the British Commonwealth is a shaky situation, possibly in process of dissolution, but the only thing that will remain is the English language, and of course the literature out of which which has been made out of that language. This the English refuse to appreciate, but this is what the English will be remembered for, as we remember the Roman Empire for Virgil, Ovid, and the rest of them. What we have produced is a great literature, but the English refuse to see it. They'd rather watch Dallas on television.